Go for it. The floor is yours, Troy.
Awesome. All right. So just a thumbs up if you can see my shared screen now. All right, perfect. So as you know, the last time I was here, we talked about HVAC. So this is my second class that I do. This is on just plumbing basics. Actually, I find that the feedback from the agents is really positive because actually plumbing is the questions you're going to probably field more than HVAC when it comes to, especially your buyers, for mainly curiosity purposes. And the reason why is because plumbing are some of the items you see a lot more frequently than the HVAC, because the HVAC is typically located outside, or the air handler is buried in the attic, or down underneath the crawl space. So a lot of this information was based on questions that agents had asked me before when we were doing classes with some plumbers. And so I've compiled it all and kind of put it into like a 30-minute class to help educate you a little bit, to just make your guys' lives a little easier. So just a couple things we're going to go over. Water heaters, just to know how old they are, tank versus tankless, because a lot of people will ask you that question, and also life expectancy and replacement costs. And then we're going to get into poly piping, because that's one that really scares a lot of people. So we'll just go into how to identify it, where it leaks, why it leaks, and then approximate cost to replace poly if you have to replumb the home. And that's sometimes nice too, because if someone asks you that question, you can kind of give them a general ballpark on that. And then lastly, I'm going to show you a little information on a really cool product called Flood Stop. And you can add this to your water heaters, ice makers, and I have mine on my upstairs laundry. And it's pretty cool because it stops the chance of having a catastrophic leak in the home. And so if you have someone who's a little bit nervous, this is a real simple do-it-yourselfer program that you can use. So we'll get into that too as well. Last time I really appreciated your guys' questions. So again, Pico's here with me. You can kind of see him right there. And he's a very curious little dog, but it's the question mark. So again, we'll just ask that statement. The only bad question is what type of question?
No question.
That's right. So if you do have a question, just go ahead and speak up. It actually makes the class better because it helps me to see kind of what you guys are dealing with, so we can continue to shape the course to be more beneficial, moving forward down the road. So let's go ahead. We're going to get into water heaters. Determining the age of a water heater is actually really simple. So if you want to know how old a water heater is, majority of water heaters are going to have what's called a manufacturer's plate or a manufacturer's sticker. And there's only a few manufacturers of water heaters, to be honest, in the United States. So they keep it pretty simple. Majority of them will always actually have a date on there. And if not, it's in the serial number. So again, not model number, but the serial number. But if you notice right here, this is an A.O. Smith, real popular brand. Right here, it actually has on that label, and usually you'll see it on the outside of the tank, the actual build date. So if you notice mine, which I took a picture of, is from 05/16/2013. So they give you the month, they give you the day, and they give you the actual year. So if anybody ever wants to know how old the water heater is, you can quickly just look at that plate and you'll be able to see the manufacturer's date on there. Super simple. So it's right in front of you. Now, if for some reason it's a brand that does not list it, you can actually go and just do through Google, just take the actual brand name. And I just use the example of Rheem. For example, let's say you found a Rheem and it didn't have a serial number. And just in Google, if you just type in Rheem serial number lookup. So again, if you go back, they'll have a serial number on that plate. You can actually click on there, and Rheem even has a website specifically dedicated for that. It says how to locate and read your Rheem water heater serial number. So when you click on that, immediately Rheem posts on there that when you see the serial number, the first two numbers will be the month, the next two numbers will be the year, and then the rest we don't care about. And then they even show you where to find the actual serial number typically on each of their actual systems that they build. So the thing is, this is always something that's available to you. It helps the seller when they're filling out their seller's disclosure. It also helps buyers too, because it's sometimes good to know how old is that water heater. And the reason why is because everything is built with a life expectancy. After a certain period of time, systems will probably leak and they'll probably need to be replaced, because nothing is made to last forever. So that brings us to our next question, because sometimes people will ask you, well, how much does it cost to replace a water heater? How long do they last? So I'm going to give you some numbers. If you want to write them down, great. If not, this is going to be on a recording. And also we're going to talk about, again, that question about tank versus tankless. So let's go ahead and talk about the tanked water heaters, the ones that contain, you know, a big, huge 40 gallons of water to 50 gallons. So the cheapest water heaters are actually electric water heaters, but they also last the shortest amount of lifespan. So an electric water heater is about 10 to 12 years. That's the typical lifespan of an electric water heater. So once you get into that 10-year mark, you know, there is a chance it can start leaking and will need to be replaced. They're the cheapest to replace because there's really not much to them. There's a heating element and electric that connects along with the plumbing lines. So those usually range around $1,200 to $1,300 for a 40 gallon. Obviously, if you get a 50 gallons, a little bit more. As you continue to get larger systems, they get bigger. Sometimes the smaller systems like the 30 gallons are a little bit cheaper. A gas, they last between 10 and 15 years. And the reason why they last a little bit longer is because they have a different type of a heating element with the gas being a flame and a pilot. So if you properly maintain them, flush them and all that sort of thing, you can probably push it to about 15. But they are a little bit more expensive too to replace because you have a little bit more components like a pilot light assembly. You have gas lines. Those range around $1,400 to $1,800 to replace now. Now, going back to when I started home warranty, those were about $300. So just like plywood right now and lumber, prices are going up. HVAC jumped up $1,500 this year to replace.
Oh.
And the reason why is just supply, demand. As you know, we're having a building crunch. And just with COVID, there's just been so many plants that have shut down or partially staffed. So because of it, we're kind of paying the price right now, and it's with the actual cost of everything. So again, those are about $1,400 to $1,800 for a gas system to replace. Now, tankless is a whole different ballgame. So to replace a tankless, you're talking $4,500. But they do last 20 plus years. And the reason why is they don't contain water. So the chance of it, you know, rusting out is a lot less likely. So again, they're going to last longer, but to replace a tankless for a tankless, you're looking at $4,500. Now, if you want to retrofit, and this is one of the questions that folks have, they might look at their water heater and they go, oh, well, I have a gas water heater. I don't like it. Maybe I'll just do a tankless. So if they ask you that, just say, okay, well, that's fine. Just so you know, it's about $6,500 to $7,000 to go from a tanked water heater to a tankless. So I didn't realize how expensive it was because I thought about that. I got a quote and I almost fell over. But now you have to run a dedicated electric circuit to it. You have to have a recirculating pump on it. There's a lot that goes into switching from a tank to a tankless. So again, if they ever ask you that to retrofit, $6,500 to $7,000. Not to say that that would stop someone from buying a home, but it might make them reconsider at least that as that's going to be the first thing I'm going to do. I would say, well, if that's the case and you have a home warranty and the system fails, take some cash and then apply it towards maybe the replacement of a tankless. And that's probably what I'll do in the future if I really decide that's something that we want to do. But there's also some pros and cons just to talk about too. So obviously the pro of a tankless is going to be the fact that, as they say, it's unlimited water. So if you have one of those freestanding tubs, which are really popular now, this is great because you're not going to run out of water. You can fill that whole thing and it's going to be hot from the time you turn on the faucet all the way till the time you fill the tub. So that's really, really nice. But there is also a downside, especially when it comes to the gas version of it. When you lose power and you still have a gas water heater, you still get hot water. If you lose power and you have a tankless gas water heater, you get no hot water, period. So it needs electricity to be able to function. So that is actually a real con for some folks if they have that concept in mind. The other issue is that if you have an electric water heater that's tanked, you do not want to spend the money and switch to electric tankless. The technology is not there. They really don't work well. I was talking to one of my top plumbers and he was saying that, you know, he has a house on property up in Creedmoor, which is north of Raleigh, up towards the Virginia border. And so because of the fact that he has electric tanked water heater, he will never switch to a tankless, even though you can get them for nothing, because they just don't work very well. If you want your lights to dim and get so-so water, then go to a tankless electric water heater. But he says, really, you don't have too many options. So just stick with that tanked water heater on the electric side. So any questions in regards to lifespan, costs, pros and cons of those? Are those questions that you guys find sometimes people are asking you when you're out and about showing properties?
I think the estimates are really helpful.
The estimates are helpful.
Okay, cool. Awesome. So the next question is how much does a warranty company pay towards the replacement? Because that's the thing, is we always want to tie in a little bit of warranty. So just so you know, some companies are putting dollar limits on there because these are very expensive systems now. So some companies have a maximum of $500 towards repair and replacement. A great thing, again, with Old Republic, we don't have a dollar limit when it comes to repair and replacement with all of our plans. So that goes with parts and labor. But as you upgrade those warranties, as you know, we have like the essential plan, we have a standard plan, an ultimate plan, platinum plan. As you get the more expensive plans, just so you know, they're going to help to offset some of the additional costs. So I just have some arrows pointed to some of the things that the better plans cover. Not to say that that's the one you want, but if a homeowner comes back to you and says, well, we had the standard plan and we're upset at you because we had to come out of pocket. Well, it's because they didn't get the ultimate and stuff like that. So when you get these older water heaters, one of the things you may want to negotiate or let your clients know is they have up to 60 days to upgrade into the ultimate or platinum. So for example, the ultimate plan is going to cover the expansion tank up here. And by the way, these expansion tanks only last about 5 to 7 years. And the reason why is they're under pressure, upside down. And this little section right here where it connects to the water line is a weld, and it's made out of obviously just a steel weld that's exposed metal, so it always leaks. So mine did the exact same thing. I replaced it on Amazon. I bought one, stainless steel, and so it's basically more of a lifetime. So that's the first thing that will go. The ultimate plan covers that. They're not super expensive, but most people will not know how to replace that. Another thing you'll need to do is sometimes have code upgrades. If this is in the garage, this is not, this is in the closet. It has to be 18 inches off the ground now. A lot of people ask why 18 inches. It's because most people in their garages store chemicals, and chemicals and fuel, actually the fumes are typically heavier. So on a gas water heater, not electric, but on a gas water heater, if it's on the ground, you have an actual active pilot light and you have fumes, and you could possibly ignite those fumes with that pilot light that's constantly burning. So that's one of the reasons why code requires we have it lifted. So with, again, that ultimate plan, we have $250 to correct code. We would actually pay to bring it up 18 inches and get it on a stand so it's off the ground, so it's a better safety feature. Now, if you need modifications, that's that platinum plan. Sometimes water heaters will need modifications because a few years back, the government put in more stricter energy efficiency standards for water heaters. Well, the only way you can make a water heater more energy efficient is make more insulation around it on the top, bottom, and sides to retain the heat. So it doesn't have to actually fire back up again or have that electric, current go into it to heat the water, the element. So because of it, they've actually gotten wider, they've gotten taller. So now you have to sometimes modify the gas line, you have to modify the plumbing lines, you have to modify the venting if it's gas. So sometimes what happens is that can get costly, especially when it's in a real awkward spot. So again, that top plan that we have, the platinum, allows for up to $1,000 to make those necessary modifications. So again, we have good, better, best scenario, but regardless of whatever plan you choose, the parts, equipment, and labor of the tank will always be covered with Old Republic with no dollar limit. So it's just something to keep in mind. And again, that's that plan that we're talking about. So essential, standard, parts and labor. Ultimate will cover the actual permits and any code upgrades, and also the expansion tank. And then the platinum will cover those necessary modifications. So that's pretty much what we had for water heaters. We're going to switch over to poly piping unless anybody has any questions. All right, we're good. Awesome. All right, so this was kind of an interesting one for me because there's not a lot of homes that have poly piping, but it is something that I think scares a lot of homeowners and agents, right? You hear that word poly and it's like, oh no, what are we getting ourselves into? So I have a picture here and I just want to show you what poly looks like. So there's a couple identifying marks on polybutylene piping. One is typically the color, but I just want to show you poly can also come in blue. And I have a picture here. This is PEX. PEX is also blue. So don't just look at the color and just determine that this is PEX, because sometimes poly actually comes in blue as well. So you know it's poly for a couple of reasons. Typically it is gray in color. Now you might have heard that the class action lawsuit is for Quest Plumbing. Has anybody heard that term, Quest? Okay, so Doug has. So that's the actual brand name. So here it is, QEST is Quest. So we know this is poly because it has Quest on it. Also, we know it's poly because it says PB, and that's shortened for polybutylene. But the dead giveaway is this right here, ASTM. So ASTM is kind of like their stamp, and every type of form of plumbing has its own type of ASTM number. So here, just give me a second. Sorry, that's what happens when we work from home. So every plumbing item has an ASTM number. So I have, like, for example, this is PEX. So I'll just show this in the camera here. It's backwards, but it has an ASTM number on it. So when I look up that ASTM number, it's going to come across as PEX. And this is PEX as well, and it comes in blue and red. This is just a different brand. And with this one, it has the exact same ASTM number as the white. So let me just show you an example of this. We're not going to get too much into it, but just in case you want to know, is it poly? If you just type in the ASTM number for tubing, it brings it up to the website of ASTM. And when I click on this ASTM number, it tells you right here, that's the ASTM number, standard specification for polybutylene or PB piping. So you know that that's going to be the dead giveaway. So again, that ASTM number never changes. So if you ever see that number 3309, that's going to be your poly piping. Because they might not have Quest or they might not have PB on there. So the question then is does all polybutylene leak, and where are the common leaks found? Because this is something, if you do know that it has poly, I would really recommend having a home inspector go into the house, right? And so there's gonna be some questions you're gonna ask them. So not all poly has actually leaked. But if it does leak, it's gonna be typically found at the fittings. Now, why does poly leak? Because the butylene portion of poly is an oil. And over time, it actually evaporates out of the actual product. So it becomes super brittle. So when something is always under constant pressure and it's brittle, what ends up happening is it starts to form leaks. So if you notice here, there's a couple examples of red flags. And this is kind of what I would ask the inspector. Did you see any repairs made under the home? So I'm going to give you an example here. This is poly here in the gray, and then it has what's called a SharkBite fitting, and then it's using SharkBite PEX plumbing. SharkBite is this little guy right here, and I have an example of one. Anybody can use SharkBite. You push it on, and it's sealed. And now you have actually an angle stop on poly piping. So that's all they basically did was cut the poly, shoved on the fitting, shoved on a new piece of PEX, which doesn't leak, doesn't have that same problem, and they're good to go. But that is a red flag because obviously there was a leak at one time right there. Here's another example where you get kind of like the white kind of chemical buildup. Again, it's going from copper to poly again. And you see that there's actually some leaking taking place. Plus the dimensions are different. So that would be another red flag for the actual home inspector to look for. Or if you see, for example, these fittings, well, a couple of things here. The fittings are tarnished. So that shows that there's some type of moisture that's taking place to cause that copper to actually tarnish. But also you see over here, you now have copper, and then you have it connected again to like a union with the poly piping. And then it goes back into poly. You know that again, probably leaked here. And so they had to make a necessary repair. So that just shows you a couple examples. So what I would ask a home inspector, if you know the home has poly piping, is there any evidence of repairs made? And the reason why is because if you talk to, for example, a plumber, they'll say if you've never had a problem with poly, just leave it alone until you have a leak. Then once you have a leak, you may want to consider repiping the home. So if an inspector goes in there and he says, you know what, there is no evidence of any repairs to the poly piping, you might not actually have to hit the panic button at that moment. But still, I think homeowners need to know that eventually they will probably want to replumb that. So I do have some basically costs for you so you know how much it's going to be. So if a home has a raised foundation, any fitting that is in the lower home portion of the home on a raised foundation would be $200 per fitting. Now, when I say a fitting, it's not this right here. What it is a faucet, right? So if there's water coming to a faucet, then it's going to be $200 for that faucet. It'll be $200 for the toilet. It'll be $200 for the shower. So you add that up. Okay, that little small bathroom that has a shower, a toilet, and a single sink, a vanity sink, that's going to be probably about $600. If you go upstairs, that would be $300 per fitting. So remember, that's going to be ice maker. That's going to be your washer dryer. Sorry, your washer, your cold and hot on your washer. So you can start adding it up. So more likely to actually fully replumb a home is going to be around $7,000 to $8,000. So it's expensive, but an HVAC system now costs more than $8,500. So just something to keep in mind. But again, it's just, at least you have a calculation, just tell them per fitting. So again, if a sink, like I have a dual vanity sink upstairs. So I have basically 2 hot sides, 2 cold sides. So that'd be $1,200 just for the vanity, because they have to run the hot line and the cold line and turn it to copper. And then on top of that, they'd have to pay for all the holes in the ceilings and walls and all that good stuff. So
if you have a tub that's also got a shower head, it would be $200 for the shower and $200 for the faucet.
So it would actually only be for the faucet because you have a hot and cold. And then once it gets to the mixing valve, all it is just a single run. So that would be basically, if it's upstairs, $600. If it's downstairs, $400.
Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's the thing, is if you actually have a mixing valve, it's like the two lines come in and then one line goes up to the shower or down to the tub spout. But that actually will just basically send the water up or down.
So have they quit using the poly in the future now, since they've noticed all these problems? Are they just older homes that have this?
Yeah, so I don't know about what your experience is, Doug, but I would say it's a lot of homes in the late 80s, 90s was when they really started using the poly. I don't know what your experience is.
Yeah, an older home that we had poly, and it was we didn't know because we didn't know what to look for back then. That was before I got into real estate. And then the buyer's like, oh, it's poly. We didn't know that. They bought the house anyways. But yeah, and that house was built like in the mid 90s. But I think they stopped using it at the end of the 90s or mid 90s or whatever. Kind of like some of that siding too was about the same thing.
Yep, exactly.
Which we had too. We had the siding also.
I have the same siding, but I fortunately have the copper, all copper in the home, which is nice, you know. Yeah, so with the poly, I was going to mention too, the reason why once you have a repair, you may want to really consider that replumb is the fact that, again, it's going to always find the path of basically weakness, water, because it's pressurized. So and this is what's happened, a plumber was telling me, like, you can go in and you repair the plumbing leak on poly and you replace that section. And as you're in the driveway backing out, the homeowner runs back out and says there's another leak. And then they have to go in and fix another section, because the fact is that this was the weakest link, but you fix that weakest link. So now it's going to the next weakest link. So eventually you start just chasing leaks everywhere in the home. And you don't want that because of the fact that, you know, that can be very damaging. And also, by the way, if you have poly, a lot of homeowners plans will not even write a homeowner's policy for your home. So you have to be really selective on who you can even have for an insurance plan for that house if they find out it has poly. And it's because of that catastrophic chance of leakage. So lastly, I just want to mention about poly that the time it's going to leak, the most frequent period is going to be actually in the spring, if you can believe it. And the reason why is you just came out of winter and it was cold and it starts warming up, and it's going to always be typically found first on the hot line, because you've had a cold winter, let's say, and the actual pipe expands when it gets hot for the hot water, and then the outside temperature cools it back down again and actually contracts and expands and contracts. So typically the plumbers say that springtime for some reason is when they start to really leak, and it's typically found on that hot water side. So again, just something to keep in mind. Just, you know, email the inspector. Look, I know it has poly, especially look at that hot water line. If you can just make sure there's no, you know, repairs. Now, just to talk about home warranty, the thing is that warranty companies are not going to pay to replumb a home. Warranties will actually have a dollar limit on what they're willing to spend on poly, and it's $500. So it's never been an issue. I've never had someone come back like super furious, because it will pay for the repair. It'll actually pay for several repairs. But the thing is that once you start getting into several repairs, again, the reality is that something that you really want, or, you know, do you want to maybe possibly replumb it? For me, peace of mind is not so much when you're living in the home, because you can catch it. What if you're on vacation for 2 weeks and then it pops open, right? That's when it becomes an issue, because you come home and you find out the home has actually been underwater for 2 weeks. It's not fun. So I just wanted to bring out a little technology. Any questions on poly before we move on to this last little spot here? And then if there's any other questions, let me know. Okay, cool. So this is actually a really cool feature. I just redid my laundry room, and I talked to my buddy who's a plumber, and he told me about this because I was a little bit nervous about that leak, you know, because my, you know, washing machine is getting a little older. So this is called Flood Stop. Is anybody familiar with this brand? All right. So if you ever have a buyer, and I was actually talking to a friend who just bought a house, and we're like, Troy, we're really scared of the second story laundry, but we had to buy the house anyways because there's just no houses available, and it was what they could afford. So if you ever have a buyer and they go and they see the laundry upstairs and they go, ugh, this really is scary, because I mean, when these things leak, it's 30 gallons a minute. I mean, it can cause so much damage in the home. So this is a brand called Flood Stop, and they make these for water heaters, ice makers, and also washing machines. So what you do is you put in a tray, and a lot of times the tray will already have a drain, but the drain gets easily overwhelmed and will overflow. So you put in a tray and you set your actual washing machine in the tray. And then this little plate you can see right here goes on the bottom of the tray, or that pan it sits in, and then it hooks into this machine, and then you just screw on, just tap them on, it's real simple, onto your actual connectors, these little valves. And these valves have motors in them. And so if this plate, I mean, it's a drop of water, since it's even a drop of water, the alarm goes off, and this little motor turns the valves and it shuts the actual valves off. And you cannot turn the water back on or those valves on until you reset the entire system. So if for some reason these hoses start to leak, which is the most common, because most of them only last 3 to 5 years, by the way, that's when they recommend replacing them. Or if the washing machine springs a leak, it's not an issue, because it's going to actually shut it off for you, and you will not damage the home whatsoever. So it's actually a really cool system. Again, they do it for an ice maker. I had a personal experience with an ice maker. We had built like a really nice custom home in Texas in the hill country. And I hooked up it was a GE Monogram, 48-inch refrigerator. And when I went to Home Depot to hook it up, I grabbed the actual hose for the water line and hooked it up. Well, you know how sometimes people, when they're confused, they pull something and then they put it back in the wrong bin? Well, I got the wrong water hose. And so the house was just, I mean, literally brand new. We just put in the carpets, but we hadn't finished sealing the actual foundation of the home, thank God. But that water line busted. And I had a call from a neighbor saying, you have water pouring off the back of your house. Now, we hadn't even moved into the home yet.
Jeez.
Yeah. So fortunately, we were able to get out there, turn off the water. It was actually flowing underneath the doors of the back patio. And I actually hadn't siliconed it yet, thank God, or I would have probably damaged the entire home. It would have filled with water. So again, that Flood Stop would actually have that little plate sitting on the bottom. And if it sensed any water, it would actually turn off the water to the ice maker even. So they're really cool. You can buy them on Amazon. This one is the most expensive, which is the washer. And that's like $230. But talk about peace of mind. So if you ever have a buyer and you're like, I'm a little bit nervous about that, not worry. Let me show you a little thing you can buy on Amazon, and they'll kind of put your mind at ease. So it's kind of a cool product. So that was pretty much what I had for plumbing, unless you had any other questions.
I think this has been really helpful and really appreciate it, Troy. Thank you very much.
Good. All right. Well, just a couple key takeaways. So remember, with our company, Old Republic, no dollar amount limits when it comes to repair replacement of water heaters. We also cover tankless. A lot of companies actually exclude tankless water heaters. And then if you do have one of those older water heaters, you know, I would definitely say that look at that Platinum plan, even though it's a little bit more expensive because it has that $1,000 for modifications. And just so you know, even if, you know, with this crazy market, just getting a bare bones basic warranty negotiated or having the buyer pay for it, I mean, it's not going to set them back a lot, especially when compared to the actual cost of stuff. $385 for a townhome, $430 for a single family. Now, I just wanted to bring out just a couple other little statistics here. As you know, right now in North Carolina, warranty usage is way down. But when we think about what happened last year in COVID, I know Old Republic has 60,000 more claims, and we spent $158 million in services. And the reason why is that with COVID right now, everybody's living and spending more time in their homes. So things are breaking more frequently. And yet here in North Carolina, and especially as you know in Raleigh, I mean, warranties don't even exist anymore. So just a couple, and I know this is best practices to keep in mind, especially for a client who's putting 3 to 5% down. And the reason why, if someone's putting 3 to 5% down, those are the folks that typically don't have a lot of money to afford a new water heater or a new HVAC. Let the client know that they have 30 days to buy a warranty after the close of sale. You can also CC myself or Stephanie and just say, hey, Stephanie or Troy, this is my client. They just recently got in a home. Can you send them a brochure just in case they want to buy one, and keep that email? And lastly, if they decide not to get one, please use that waiver we have in our brochure and have them sign that waiver showing that they've waived the benefits of a warranty, and they will not hold you responsible if something major takes place and it breaks in the home. Now, I know, like, for example, in certain areas that are very competitive, also, if your buyer is planning on getting a warranty, because they know the seller's not providing it, on the offer to purchase, what they're doing now is they're saying buyer to purchase home warranty in behalf of the seller. And let the seller know that they will actually order the warranty right away once the offer is accepted, and the seller will actually get benefits and coverage during the listing period. So it's just another way that you can be a little bit more competitive in the marketplace and still use a warranty in behalf of maybe that negotiation process.
Wait, say that again. That's for our seller?
So yeah, so for if you have a buyer, you can put on the offer to purchase, buyer to purchase home warranty on behalf of the seller. And so then as soon as that plan is set up, even if it's a buyer's plan, we always include seller's coverage for them, the seller. So the seller will actually have coverage for their water heater, their dishwasher, plumbing, electrical. And some are even actually paying the additional $75, it's only 75 bucks, to cover the actual HVAC up to $1,500 during the listing period for the seller. So it's just another incentive. And the nice thing about this is if it doesn't make it to close, your buyer doesn't have to pay for the warranty. So it's just a negotiating tool that they can use where it's not going to hurt them if they have to walk away. As long as they don't put $80,000 to $100,000 in due diligence, right, Doug? then no matter what, they're stuck basically with that home unless they're willing to walk away and part with that money. So just a couple of things. And then also I just wanted to mention, I talked to Meredith about this. If agents are working in the Raleigh office, if we can make sure that you're coded to the Raleigh office, that way when you order warranties, you're coded to me. If you work on the coast, we want to make sure you're coded to the coast and you use that address so that you're coded to Stephanie Midget. Okay. So that way you get the reps for both of us. Yeah.
Troy, send me an email reminder about that, and I'll make sure to loop in my closing manager, as she's the one who submits all of those.
Yeah,
and
please.
That way she'll make sure it goes to the right place.
Yeah, I mean, I love Stephanie. She couldn't join us today, but I mean, I don't make a lot of money teaching free classes.
No, we understand. But yeah. April is our person that sets everything up. So she's really the person to make sure.
Perfect. So I'll send you an email today, and she can go through and kind of just make sure of that. Janine, you had a question?
Yeah, I have a question. Only because this has happened to me, I had a client that bought a house in Hubert that was a flip, and it had a home warranty. Obviously, it was unoccupied for 3 months or so, and home inspection report showed absolutely nothing wrong with the plumbing, totally fine. Well, right after she moved in, the whole house, I mean, it backed up into the bathroom. I mean, just, it was a mess. And so she had the warranty. I told her immediately to call the warranty company, because at what point do you figure out, I guess, will you guys go out there and like run the snake and find out if it's the municipal side or if it's the house side and who's responsible if there's an issue? Like, how far does Old Republic cover on that regard? Because I don't want them to get screwed, you know?
Yep. Okay, so let's clear Old Republic a couple of things when it comes to stoppages. One is, I think as a company, we list in our plan that we have no length limit. So most companies will put in 125 feet max. We do not actually have a max. And the reason why 125 is a standard cable that you would run, once you have to go past that, you have to get specialized equipment and it's more expensive. So we will actually pay the additional cost. Now, if we get in and we're running the snake and we find out there's a collapsed line, that's not going to be covered by warranty companies unless you get, here, let me get the brochure. There's an option you can purchase for Old Republic, and it's called the outside extended leak coverage. I have a brochure somewhere, but it'll cover up to $1,000 for if something is outside collapsed. So again, it would have to be working and running, and then all of a sudden there's a problem. We go out now. Obviously, it would be maybe unknown pre-existing that would fall under, but you'd have $1,000 for that. So we do have that as an option that you can get, especially if you have like an older home and you have trees in the yard and you're a little bit concerned. Okay. The other thing that's really cool with Old Republic is we cover what's called hydrojetting, and that's again excluded by most warranty companies. Now, what hydrojetting is when you run a standard sewer cable through the line and you come back and someone over the years has dumped grease into the line. What happens is that you pull the actual line through and you pull it back, and the grease just claps back over and causes the stoppage all over again. So the only way to get rid of that grease is you have to put this high powered jet, and it runs like in a rotation through the line, and it blasts the lines and cleans it out, almost like plaque in the artery sort of thing. And we actually cover that. It's typically excluded by, actually it's funny, I just have this card here. We just did one in Fayetteville. The cost to do that was $1,400, and we paid it. But if they had another warranty company, they would have not actually had that covered. So sometimes there's usually little nuances, but it just shows, you know, kind of where the rubber meets the road when it comes to warranty companies.
Yeah, thank God it ended up being a municipal side and not her side, because it was a damn mess. It was, and you know, you don't know till you know. So
and
anyway.
It can happen at any time. I mean, these folks, I mean, they just recently moved their home, and it was the previous owners that were putting grease on just down their kitchen line. So it was $1,400 just to clean the kitchen line to get to the main. Yeah. So, but the thing is, now they have a sink that they can actually wash and the water actually leaves the sink instead of just sitting there for the time. So he had to jerry rig the whole system just to get it so that they could, you know, figure this thing out. We were afraid there was a break in the line too. So if we feel like a break in the line, we'll also pay to run a camera. And with that camera, we can determine whether or not where that break is. If it's in the foundation of the home, we again have a certain dollar amount where we'll actually go down and fix it if it's in an actual encapsulated concrete foundation sort of thing. Yeah. But yeah, so plumbing is not cheap. It's not as expensive as HVAC, but it's actually probably the second most common claim that we get is something related to plumbing. HVAC is still always number one. And that's the main reason why people will buy a warranty. And I always say buy a warranty because you just don't know what the HVAC, you know, when it will break or if it will break. Sort of.
And I think one thing, a big takeaway for me, and I think we should kind of remember this as we walk out the door, is Troy made an excellent point about your folks who aren't putting down 20%. I mean, people putting down 3 to 5%. Yeah, ideally seller pays it, right? Of course. But if you can get it and take care of it at closing, for these folks that don't have a lot of money out of pocket, it is a great idea, especially if they're buying an older home where you know that the systems are older. Just to make sure that they don't have a huge out-of-pocket item in that first year initially, and then of course they're free to renew it, of course. So, you know, just make sure you're providing that value to your clients when you're talking to them about the value of a home warranty.
Yeah, and the reason why I brought that up was because I was talking to an agent in Cary just recently, and she says, "Oh, well, you know, how can they get a warranty? They can't even barely afford the house." I'm like, "Well, then they should get a warranty." The average American, they say 69% of Americans have less than $1,000 in savings. So if you're using all your money and you're getting into a house, you can't even afford a new water heater. I mean, so now if an HVAC comes along, now you're buying that on a credit card or some type of program where you're making a monthly payment. you basically became house poor. And I was talking to a broker in Garner actually last week, and she was saying that this idea of not using warranties when it comes to even how it would hurt your referrals, because I mean, people can get very resentful when they realize they probably paid a lot for a house, and now they have systems that don't work, and they don't have the money to fix those systems. So again, the home warranty can kind of really alleviate that. So it is funny because I look at it like, as this market's getting crazier, you would think warranties would reflect what the market is doing, but it's not. And with COVID, a warranty is actually more important now than ever before. But again, a lot of agents are in this mindset, I just have to get my clients in the home and we'll do whatever it takes. And that's one of the things we're going to toss out because the seller's not offering it. So just because the seller's not offering it doesn't mean that the buyer still can't get it. So, and if they don't and the buyer doesn't want it, at least then it's kind of like, well, we talked about it and you chose not to get it. That's between you and Jesus now, right? So, I mean, we did the best we could to help you out. Now, some agents are saying, well, this again, what the broker's saying, if a house is going $50,000 over, that extra commission that the agent's getting, since it's tax deductible, some agents are just getting the fairly bare bones basic as like a thank you gift, because again, that's a good referral that you don't want to lose out. So awesome. Any other questions before we wrap it up, Doug, or anybody else?
No, I think this is incredibly valuable, and I really appreciate it, Troy.
Yeah, no problem. I'll send you that email for your transaction coordinator so that she can go through and just make sure that everybody's in the right offices.
Yep.
Okay, sweet. And if you ever have any questions, let me know. I've always been happy to be a resource. I've been doing home warranty since '95, so I'm not new to the business. But over the years, the experience that I've gotten, I always like to share with you, because if I can make your job a little bit easier, or if it allows you to be that much more competitive in the marketplace, then great. I will always want to be there for you.
Absolutely. Well, we really appreciate you, bud.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, hey, have a great day, guys. Enjoy the
Thank
cool weather. It'll get hot again. So
Tomorrow's going to be lovely.
all right, well, enjoy. You'll be on the beach. I'll still be here in the pollen and Raleigh. So
Yeah, kids are out of school tomorrow. Lord have mercy.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank y'all. Have fun with the kids.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.